Good morning, guten Tag, Talafalava. Well, as you all know, this is Dr. Snowbrown. Welcome to this morning's informal preaching. Now, this is the third part of our so-called preaching, continuing on from the last two preachings that we've had so far. Yes, warning to the two-faced son of a bitches. That's correct. So this is part 3, continuing on. Now, this morning, I was asleep again, woken up. I think this is natural. This is natural. This is actually normal for me as a meek natural pastor. That from time to time I'm going to try and sleep, but then of course somebody's going to knock on my door and I have to wake up, So this is actually to answer. Probably this third part of this preaching is, well, I'm going to try and make it speak to you all calmly. That's great, especially my Snowgate Club congregation, especially the Snow Shepherds, and the so-called Knights and Chiefs. You're still out there, still, rolling on. You're still there. You will all notice that there's already postings to do with the Knights Templars. That's correct. And you can already see, in fact, that prayer by Jamie Roboff, that's correct, Roboff, to pray to, especially for unjust situations, to reverse unjust situations. Well, I can honestly say right now that the prayer does work, but I haven't prayed it for the last 2 days, last 48 hours, 48 hours that I haven't prayed it. But I'll probably pray it again today. But I think it is starting to say something, that there definitely are enemies of mine that are still, quite visible. They might be in the shadows. They are still dangerous people, harmful enemies of the independent state of Crystal Kingdom, especially I being the director of such a kingdom, such a mere kingdom, and also the owner, co-founder and owner of such a rare intellectual property. So what this means, every time if I'm preaching about the same enemies, same people, it's probably because I haven't buried them. And it's probably because my Lord is saying, through my guide, Angel Solomon and Archangel Warren, that there's still a threat, there's still a danger and a threat, and that these enemies are still around and are still breathing and are still targeting and are still applying their criminal harmful protocols and arbitrary dictatorships. Even as I speak right now this morning, that the enemies are still there, that the enemies that I've been preaching throughout my ministry, it means that my Lord is saying, I need to do something, you need to do something about these enemies. But they must be buried and taken out. That's correct. No compromising, otherwise, a lot of every aspect of your life will be affected. It's already been affected. I mean, the fact that St. Joseph, a local, Catholic church, parish, and even a few of their so-called, the cardinal and the rest of them, and the clergy, and in fact, and even the dangerous ones, especially the Irish community, that didn't actually like the fact that I was establishing my own private ministry on my Facebook while I was still a member there at their church. That they had a hatred, but more so were actually bigots. There's bigotry against women being pastors, or being a shepherd. That's correct. And I felt that there was great hostility and animosity from there inside St. Joseph. There was no support, of course. I mean, understandably, they only respect the ordained clergy and only accept males, men to be to be part of the so-called main clergy or part of the clergy of the Catholic faith. But what I don't agree with what they did was going through this son of a bitch next door and even these people inside this address, and actually damaging and actually trying to sabotage, desecrate, destroy my intellectual property, meaning my masses and my so-called sermons, that's correct, and everything else that I was trying to do on my Facebook. They had no right to do that, I'm sorry. I mean, I don't call them Christians at all. I actually think they're apostates. They're a different type of faith. I mean, the Catholic faith, Catholicism, is completely different, but they are actually the most dangerous Christians out of all the other flocks and other Christian denominations I've discovered. They're actually dangerous. They're actually violent. And they're also harmful. That if anybody said anything about so-called their clergy or anything about their faith, like these wolves, they're actually, in fact, I'll be very honest. I actually think that the majority of sheep and shepherds that are part of the Catholic faith are wolves in sheep's clothes. Are wolf in sheep's clothes. That's correct. I have never come across such harmful, dangerous sheep and shepherds. They are actually wolves in sheep's clothes, I've discovered. The fact that they actually went through these people to sabotage your private ministry, not only try to damage, but, like hinder it. And we're doing all sorts of creating havoc and wreaking havoc, that's correct, on my digital devices, my computer, my laptop, you name it. You know what? That's not right. Just because they were jealous of your, little kingdom and what you were doing, that's correct. They didn't have to do that. I mean, come on now. You call these house Christians? And you went behind my back, that's correct. And you even, you actually did torture me, that's correct, through these people via their criminal harmful protocols during the time that, that you were running your own ministry, privately from 2018. Because I didn't leave until about August 2019, I think. That's correct. From St. Joseph. They're not nice Christians. No, they're not very nice Christians at all. And that's why I say things what I say about the cardinal, because the cardinal is not very nice. In fact, they're actually very harmful. They're likely to assault people. They are. And probably because they've got the KKK and MNB that are actually now Christians inside their church. I ain't never heard of a criminal organizations, that's right, members from a criminal organizations being part of a, what do you call it, a Christian denomination, like a flock of Jesus. It's unheard of. It's unheard of. Here's how it is for real, as a Christian, because I know, I'm experienced. I'm a devout Christian. I've been a Christian for a long time. You cannot be part of Jesus' flocks. If you're in a gang organization or a criminal organization, you cannot serve two masters. One being Satan and one being God. You have to serve only one. So if you are, what I'm saying is you could only be an apostate. Your faith could only be an apostate. So the people that run your church or your so-called, I'm not trying to say that, the people that the church authority who runs the Catholic faith or your faith, they must be apostate. They have to be apostates. So that means they serve two gods. They serve two masters, one being Satan and one being God. So you cannot serve two masters. That's correct. Otherwise, then you're not partaking from the table of God. You're partaking from two tables, one being Satan and one being God. And if you practice adultery and you violate all the 10 commandments, I'm afraid that the Catholic faith is flawed. The Catholic faith is an apostate faith, meaning a pagan faith. So before they use Jesus to holify, to make their so-called, faith even more holy, but they stole from him, when they crucified him, they took all his treasures and whatnot, and managed to somehow make their faith even more holy and appear clean and pure, when in actual fact it's not. Catholicism is actually different. So their faith is actually always been Catholicism, pagan religion. But what it appears to be, it appears as though it's pure and it's holy and it's clean. It's been, It's being sanctified by Jesus, all right, blood and things. But Satan, they serve two masters. They serve two masters, I'm afraid. So that's what the Catholicism really is about. It's a man-made religion, but they serve two masters. That's correct. So that's why they don't mind. They have what we call the absolution prayer. You know, they forgive you. But I'm afraid their faith actually is bad, evil. What do I mean by that? Well, if you can't serve two masters, that's correct. You can only serve one master. Then that means the question is, why are they allowing people, members from a criminal organization, to be part of their congregation, to attend masses and services? That's correct. Inside the holy temple of God. Jesus and God does not allow Satan to come inside and partake of the bread and wine. That's correct. And be part of the service. That's correct. Satan isn't interested. I mean, if Satan comes into the church in the form of MB or KKK, these sort of demons, wolves, they're actually Draculas and goats. But they're worse than the wolves in sheep's clothes. That's correct. But they're also wolves in sheep's clothes. So if they're there, they're not interested in serving God and doing the will of God. They're there to look at, to check out the sheeps and check out. That's correct. Remember, they're hungry. They're predators. That's correct. I suddenly realized that. I can understand now why I left the Catholic faith. I never really liked any Christians there inside the flock of St. Joseph, because I think they were more. I think the way I see it and I felt it was that there was more hatred and animosity and hostility towards you for some odd reason, and I didn't understand that. It was like maybe they know something about you that you don't know anything about them. That's correct. But I would have to say, put it down to these people have got something going on with St. Joseph. That's correct. It must be some sort of, I don't know, it's the partnership. I think it's a partnership again. That's correct. The treaty partnership and their protocols. So I just want to yeah, that's right, Catholic know that they are not part of my kingdom. That's correct. So you're a different faith, a different type of faith. You are a different flock as well. But you're not part of my flock. I'm sorry. That's correct. Because, well, our clergymen don't align. We don't align. The head of my church, well, it can only be Dr. Snowbound. And my sovereign head is Queen Snowbound. That's correct. So it's not an agreement with the Catholic faith, because the head of their church is Pope Francis. And the cardinals and the rest of them, well, the higher up the hierarchy, are also part of the church authority. But they do not support your type of ministry. Hang on, clergy, you clergymen. But you see, you're a Knights Templar. There's no doubt about that. And I might also be a Black Knight of Lawn. My descendants are actually Knights Templars. That's correct, the Trevoranas and the Stuarts. So for them to come in and take advantage of your little kingdom, which is what they've been doing, without any donations, I'm sorry, but that's now hypocrisy. That's correct. Where you want to eat your cake twice, double the blessing, quintuple the blessing, but without any donations, right? And again, that is also desecrating God. It is desecrating God. It is desecrating God. But I think St. Joseph, the Catholic faith, had already done that. When they went through these people and really sabotage the core of your church, which is masses and sermons. It started. That's right, your little meek church. This is actually a Knights Templars church, but this is private. It's a private monarch, private ministry. And in the conditions, it clearly states that anybody from criminal organizations are not welcome to enter. That is correct. Even if it's on social media. So we've got this contamination around, but because the church is now contaminated, that's correct. Because, well, you can all see what's coming in. That's correct. So people in criminal organizations, they do not belong in a flock, in the church of God. They do not belong there. You either leave the criminal organizations. Here's how it is. If you want to become a reborn Christian, and if you want to become a Christian, you have got to leave the disgusting thing behind. Leave the criminal organization, because you're serving Satan at the moment and you're on the wrong side of the track, and you're not likely to do things the right way, nor walk through the straight and narrow path. It's not happening. It's not happening at all. So for you to think that you can come into God's Jesus holy temple, and like you're coming in for a tiki tour kind of thing, well, also for a nosy, have a little nosy, check out the so-called sheeps, any nice sheeps there that you can devour and eat. I'm afraid you're in the wrong place. And as a Knights Templar, we got a right to forcibly remove you out of any churches, but we also got a right to put you to death. That's correct. That is absolutely correct. And as the sovereign head of a kingdom, I got every right to tell you, why you ought not to enter God's holy temples. And why they ought not to. Because it's apostate. They're bringing in contaminations and apostasy. So it's just as well, my kingdom is established on Facebook. That's correct. But again, non-Christians who come in to take advantage of my intellectual property without donations, man, you people are going to be slaughtered by our Lord Jesus Christ. That's correct. You cannot take advantage of my Lord, especially my Queen, because you're actually stealing. So for you that it has been benefiting, if it's transformed your life, if it's helped you spiritually and even in every other aspects of your life, you need to send me a donation, but you need to give me a donation. That's correct. Now, if you're never going to give me a donation, I'm afraid you should not enter my kingdom under any circumstances. That's correct. You're taking the mickey, but you're stealing. That's correct. Anyway, continue on from our discussion. Because my faith is what? My faith is pure. I know my faith is pure, but it's contaminated at the moment. And it's because of these people inside this address, and this criminal organization, and the KKK, and also the non-believers who are not Christians that are coming in and are hacking in and doing stuff that they shouldn't be doing. I don't know. And also connecting stuff. I don't know why they need to carry out experiments. This is how it is. This criminal organization, the president of this MMB, the radio local organization, I tell you right now, buddy, you don't own this intellectual property here. You don't own this person, this noble that's speaking to you right now. There's over 800,000 of your people here in this country. And I'm talking about the indigenous people, the Maoris. Majority of them are in prison. Majority of them got so many addictions. The way I see it, buddy, you got more rights, that's great, to dictate to your own people and all the rest of them that are in other criminal organizations. But if you ever think that you're going to take advantage of me, that's great, and dictate to my family, buddy, I'll bury you. I will bury you. And I will shut down, disband, dissolve your organization. That's correct, criminal organization. You got to learn that there's some boundaries. That's correct. And you need to respect my boundaries. Because I have never spoken to the president of this so-called criminal organization, this MMB organization. Never. And I've never needed to anyway. Because, well, I've never been a slave. Why should a non-slave, somebody like you, ever speak to somebody like that? That's correct. Let alone have their members, all of a sudden come near you, let alone target you for whatever reason. He's got more rights to look after and dictate and control his so-called, not flock, but that group, that's correct, that he's legally, responsible to. His slaves. that are registered, that are part of his criminal organization. But just because you got members living inside this address, don't mean you can start taking advantage. That's correct. And dishing out the wrath towards in my direction and applying your criminal protocols, because it ain't nothing to do with me. It's got nothing to do with me. That's correct. I only came here for tenancy. I didn't come here to be hijacked, let alone to be targeted by your members that are living inside this address, let alone to be, dictated to, and to be stalked and harassed, and to have my digital devices to be damaged by the likes of you people. Excuse me. That you got no right to. And you'll have a lot of explaining to do, but as far as I'm concerned, I've already ordered 1,000 Nazi soldiers. And the only thing that's coming your way, Prezi, is the president of that organization, is the bullet to the head. And every other member, that's great, especially the ones that were inside this building or this address during my tenancy, who caused a lot of harm, who actually applied your criminal, arbitrary dictatorships and your slavery type harmful protocols. And anybody else, this is another warning to everybody else in the local community of Upper Hutt. If you ever apply any criminal harmful protocols in my direction, due to the instructions from these criminals inside this address, even from the president of the organization, you're going with them. That's correct. You will also be put to death, a bullet to the head. You will also be under fire. You will also be buried with them. Right? Because you got no right to go against. I told you, this is a monarch. When you're dealing with a sovereign head, the only thing you're going to get is a death penalty. That's correct. Commoners, as in commoners could not create my intellectual property. That's correct. Because you wouldn't have the intelligence, let alone the wisdom, to know how to create the so-called intellectual properties that I have established so far already, that I own. That's correct. You wouldn't have the wisdom or the intelligence even to write a play like my play that is actually part of my so-called heritage, my nobility, part of being a Knights Templar. That's correct. Those are my rare intellectual property, my gifts and talents, and you got no right to steal them and misuse and abuse them, especially by the likes of criminals. Hey, you're not a Knights Templar, you're not a German. What are you doing stealing, my intellectual properties or my stuff for you to go and play with it, and muck about and think you can, there's evil. The only thing you're going to get is a death penalty. That's correct. Why would a president of a criminal organization, let alone its members, be interested in my intellectual property? That's a spiritual thing. It's a religious thing. That's correct. You ain't a Christian. What's it got to do with you? Got nothing to do with you. That's correct. Get out of my kingdom. The condition states very clearly, you're not to enter. There must be a reason why. If you start harming the so-called director, or let's just say the natural pastor, you start harming me because of my comments that I say inside you can't handle. And that's probably why you're not welcome to enter a kingdom like that, because you're not that special, but you don't have the endurance, the patience, let alone the wisdom and the understanding. That's correct. To be able to, to understand what I'm preaching about. So don't think that you know me that well, because you don't. You're not even a Christian for starters. So you wouldn't know what I'm talking about. Majority of so-called, sheeps and shepherds and experienced shepherds understand what you're preaching about. That's correct. But on a lay term preaching, when you're dealing with a bunch of pests and whatnot, that's correct. This is what happens. So I don't preach about, my preaching doesn't come out like that unless you guys are coming in, unless there is somebody in the background or in the shadows or has entered my kingdom that should not be entering. So this contamination, there are pests, there are wolves in sheep's clothes, there are goats, there are murderers, there are rapists, there are sex offenders, you name it, that are coming in. That's correct. And when I preach, I'm picking it up. That's correct. So don't blame me and take offense by my style of preaching when, hey, that's what I'm dealing with. And those are the kinds of so-called pests, or the kinds of, they're not sheeps. But sick people that are coming in, that's correct, that I'm having to preach to, which I probably don't need to preach to. I much prefer people that are not from criminal organizations and people that are qualified, that are from noble families, that are also, are smarter. I call them smart sheeps. No sheeps, no shepherds are smart sheeps and smart shepherds. Yes, honey bun. Can you imagine the lot that's coming in? I hope to God that you haven't connected anything to my in the background. Again, people in criminal organizations, you've got no right to connect anything illegally to access my so-called intellectual property. My intellectual property was never made for people that are in criminal organizations, that are outlaws, that are practicing tyranny and anarchy every day. What are you doing? Why do you need to access my so-called kingdom? And why do you need to connect something to it? My goodness gracious, that's correct. Get out. Get lost, actually, and piss off. You don't need to come in to contaminate. And I don't want to bring any rubbish in there. That's great. Irrespective of what I post in my church TV, hey, that's the heart condition. That's what the heart condition of my kingdom is saying. I need this right now. That's correct. Well, I can see why. There is probably blah, blah, blah coming in. That's correct. They shouldn't be here. Typical. I know. They should go back to school. They really should go back to school. That's great. Go and finish their so-called, they didn't finish their primary school, secondary school, let alone secondary school. They need to go and complete something. Rather than busy being busybody towards you. They should go and study their whakapapa or their so-called genealogies. They learn their family trees. If they got any, it's correct. Now, what's the next topic that I want to move on to? That's correct, Mr. Prick. Mr. Prick. Oh, Mr. Prick, all right. Oh, Mr. Prick. So, I told Dr. ADTLipine. That man, that's correct, whom I actually think was the reason you got set up with a computer course with that particular lady and her partner. That's correct. That she's actually a member of this MMB organization. I actually think that it was Mr. Prick. It was that culprit. That's correct. But the president again, I really don't understand what is the president doing of this organization. Setting up this noble with one of your members at a computer course. Come on. Why do you need to do that for? Your members shouldn't be doing any courses next to a noble like me. That's correct. Although there was only 4 of us. But what I'm saying is, President, you set that one up with my rallies, didn't you? I'm afraid you did. So you obviously got an interest. Yeah. And Mr. Prick as well. It looks like your cousin side of the family also orchestrated that. So your parents are so cunning because they pretended as though they didn't know who that woman was. And that's right. I have a funny feeling that they actually did know. And maybe it was because they wanted to set you up. And now look what's showing up here at this address. Well, it kind of explains why there's been a lot of illegal activities that's been going on inside this address. That's great. And I'm guessing that the president is to blame. All this experimenting. But I think Mr. Willow there, who's an associate, part of the elite, in terms of Anthony Shaw in Oriental Bay, got a lot of explaining to do as well. What are a bunch of losers like these sort of criminals doing, targeting you? That's correct. And trying to use you for their criminal harmful protocols. Why do you need to use people in order to get ahead? Are your slaves not that many of your slaves inside your criminal organization to use them? You know, for what you can get out of them? Oh, don't think that just because I'm a royal that you can use me to, to connect with the elites. That's correct. And then, of course, now we've got to say, oh, well, now the elites actually like you because, they know your status. So they prefer to see you having sex with Mr. Prick. In where? In a lecture room or somewhere? So is that the kind of thing that the elites actually like? They like watching so-called other arrogant son of a bitches from criminal who might be associates having sex with students up at university, whether it be in a lecture room or in an office or workplace or something, while they're having a little, peeping Tom? Is that the kind of thing that the treaty partnership encourages? I wouldn't be surprised. No, I wouldn't be surprised at all. So I guess all the parents out there know the so-called the protocols. Yeah, what the Pākehās like to do. I'll tell you right now. I can generally tell a Pākehā or anybody if they're having sex, if they're having lots and lots and lots of sex outside the marriage arrangement with other adults and even young persons. I can actually tell. When they speak, it's like, holy moly, that one that's great. They're arrogant. They're so arrogant. Did you know that if you have sex with so many people, especially Pākehās, outside the marriage arrangement, that you're going to become very, very ignorant, but arrogant as well. Your demeanor and your spirit is going to be very, very, and you're going to become very demanding, but very ignorant. And you'll find that you'll be very sneaky as well. It's like you're kind of like a tricky person, like a trickster. That's great. And you'll find that you lie a lot as well because you're hiding something. You're hiding your secret. Hey, I just had sex with such and such, with Bob down the road, who's happily married with children. And I don't want his children to know that I've just had sex with him. That's great, with their dad. Because, well, nobody needs to know that. And, of course, down the other street, I just had sex with the bus driver and the taxi driver and the teacher. So you're pretty much covered. But can you imagine now why people that behave that way, you can tell by their body language, their facial expression. They're peeping toms. They're also peeping toms. They like to pervert. That's correct. They would be perverts. And they're also what the Samoans would call boikolos, and they like to do a lot of boikolos. That's correct. But sneaky. And generally you can tell that they're sleazy as well. Although some people sound very decent, but really arrogant. I can hear it in the voice. They have sex with so many people. That can make them very arrogant. That's why Gayleen Riley, the one that works at Banhaven Rest Home, that's how I can tell. She's a demon. She's the biggest demon. She has that kind of attitude and demeanor because she has sex with so many different people. Different men. That's correct. Persona. I don't think you guys are aware that. Did you know that you end up their so-called bad habits? That the people that you're having sex with, outside the marriage arrangement, their bad habits and their bad attitudes, which might be racism, prejudice, ignorance, and bigotry, will rub off into your spirit. Will contaminate your spirit. That's correct. And then you in turn will reflect that attitude. You in turn will it's like a disease, like COVID-19. You pass that sickness on to somebody else. That's correct. So that's why we as Christians, we know what God is teaching us. That's why it's good to be married only to one person. Have one person. That's correct. As Pastor Michael Todd was always saying, sex and lovemaking, but sex, intimacy, it's got to be from the right container. But it's better and it's greater either. It's even more a blessing if it's in the right container. That's correct. I just gave you a great illustrations why having sex outside of marriage is not a good idea. And this is another thing why it's a bad idea to have sex outside the marriage arrangement. What you'll find is that other man who's married, whose spirit might be so arrogant, and I mean like really, really arrogant, to the point that, okay, because he thinks he's had sex with somebody else or with you, now he thinks he can control your family, control your sister, control your brother, control your uncle, control your aunts. So what I'm saying is that if you do that a lot, what you'll find, don't be angry and don't start complaining. If those men, that's correct, that you've had sex with outside the marriage arrangement, turn around and start dictating to your family, and I mean the whole family, that's correct. They start dictating to your privileges and controlling your lives and even denying your privileges, is because either somebody in the family had sex with one of them, or because you've had sex with somebody that's really controlling, that's correct. Because generally that's what happens to a lot of men and women, is that they become possessive and controlling when they've had sex with somebody. That's correct. And this is why I want to cover this arrogant son of a bitch that's in the islands. Mr. Prick, that's correct. Makaukia whainga ole makolo la. That's right. To Dr. ADTLipine, more like Falawila. More like Ukio, that's correct, Fali. I guy. You say that again. Oh, Mr. Prick. Ufufula ola mka kia me wa faya. Esa le fia pule ia. Ale o kia le me o mayaki oi. Gele me kumu le loko leanga. Oh, I knew that. When I met you, Mr. Prick, back in 96, that was just another setup. This was just like the computer course setup in 2001. That's correct. In fact, almost every aspect of your life going right back, that's correct. From 96 to 2001, and then the university, 2002, 2003, with the so-called police officer, and from there on in, and all these other long-banning decisions, they're all setups. They're all setups. And I cannot understand why. You've never signed up as a member, and you never ever wanted to be a slave. But you already's got a lot of explaining to do. So all I got to say to Mr. Prick is that he was just another setup. He was just another setup. But me o kupu mor kamalo e whaere ko olua. Ale. So ngā lavela mor kamalo e whaere ko olua. Mole ufa lava male ai kai. Fia pule. Hey, I didn't give you my complete consent. That's correct. You know very well that at that age, 23, I wasn't interested in sex at all. You knew that, but you took advantage of the situation, of course. Oh, we were never in a relationship? You're dreaming? You wish, mister. That's right, you were happily married. I mean, the moment I found out, you only got violated 3 times, thank goodness. The moment I suspect something wasn't right, I had to put a stop to it because I wasn't feeling too well. And I didn't like the fact that, what he was trying to do, that's correct, where it was affecting your studies. So you told your parents, and then your mother rang up, and we got the full story, the full gist. That was that he's happily married. He lied about his marital status. Well, that was the end of that. That's correct. In fact, I was even more traumatized and very, very saddened by that. That's correct. That he had actually taken advantage of you. That he actually lied as well. Horrible, what a horrible feeling. And then to find out back in 1999, well, we're having a Christmas do, they're in Fort Davis Crescent, your cousin's address, that Mr. Prick, everything that was happening, what he was doing to you back in 96, your cousin, her parents were laughing, that's great, making fun of you. They had actually known everything that was going on, very private stuff, that's correct. Now, how do you suppose, as a victim, how do you feel when you're being laughed at and mocked at, made fun of? That's correct. I thought to myself, it's like, oh, that is so fucking disgusting. But I was trying to heal myself at the time. But I was just so disappointed, but so angry on the inside. And now all I want to do is shoot all your rallies because they're liars. That's correct. They actually are part of that organization. But the fact that they actually used you Let the president. President is an arrogant, ugly son of a bitch. I got nothing to do with. If anything, he's got no right to target our family and love your pule man makuainga. And same with Mr. Brick. He's just a falewila. Maleufa. Makes if our pule me full makuainga. If I got more right to say, you know what? They should strip his matai title. They should take his matai title off. That's great. He should have been chucked in jailbird. But you couldn't throw somebody like that in jailbird if the elites were going to protect his so-called backside, his lying sort of adultery type mulilua asshole. That's great. Because he is a real mulilua. Not only that, molpa'umuku. Mr. Brick is a straight up pa'umuku. Ahoa. They've been doing that ever since back in 96. Having sex with the elite, having sex with other people in the community that are outside the marriage arrangement. That's great. That's what Mr. Brick was doing, and probably escort job as well, while he was studying to get extra money. It's the hard truth. But I mean, look at him now. He's a doctor. Got his doctorate. But I mean, education is an easy subject. Yeah, education is really easy. Not hard. But let's hope he got his degree the right way. And not the wrong way. That's great. Not the up the butthole or that kind of way. That's great. Because knowing people that are part of criminal organization and are associates, they don't do anything right. They never do anything right. They always find a shortcut somehow. That's correct. To get ahead. Now, of course, if he used you, to be part of the elite, I wouldn't be surprised at all. Just like the president of this organization and this son of a bitch here next door and these people that are part took advantage of their tendency here. That's great. My God, why is it that everybody wants to take advantage of you? And I mean, like, actually use you to get ahead. It's great. And then you think about the Maori people. They think that, your holy altar, just because it's got Aotearoa on it, New Zealand. Now the Maoris think, oh, well, we can take advantage of her holy altar. Well, I'm going to use this. Yeah, use it for what? You ain't a Christian. Right? Get lost. You got over 800,000 of your people. You get more funding in the millions and the billions from the crown. You don't need to take advantage of me. That's great. You need to pay up, donation, but you don't need to steal from me, is what I'm saying. In order to get ahead. Your people are already blessed. You don't need any more blessings. That's great. In fact, I actually think they should control their blessings. Yeah. And they've also been given too much. They need to get off their asses and work the money that the crown has given them. You know what? Use the intellectual properties and stuff that the crown gave your people to use. Why don't you create your own churches? That's correct. Why do you need to come and damage mine and control and dictate to my intellectual property? Who do you think you are? That's correct. You people, there's over 800,000 of you. You got so many iwis and hapus. That's correct. You get more support, more funding, and yet it's just my intellectual property appears here in social media. And all of a sudden, you want to drop in and you want to give your peace of mind. That's great. By going through these criminals and dictating and controlling my intellectual property. You got the nerve. I know. My goodness. Is there no end? Almost every aspect of your life in this local township and at this location is dictated to. But they got no right to dictate. They're a bunch of commoners and criminals. And they got the nerve to think they can dictate to you. That's correct. And yet they've got the other arrogance is they're not willing to give you. They're not willing to pay. That's great. And there's no win-win. There's no win-win. It's like they want everything for free. They want to use, everything that I've created, Animan. The people of Aotearoa, and even, the dumb podcasts in this country, who are commoners, all they've been wanting to do is use it for what they can get out so they can, get ahead. That's great. That's not how life is, people. Each and every one of you got to create your own intellectual property. Why don't you go and create your own company? You think it's just that easy to create a company? Out of out of nowhere? No, it's not easy, because I can tell you right now, if the company registry told you to go and create your own company, and you came with your own company and it looked like it was very similar to my idea, it looks like it was a duplicate or a copy, I'm afraid that as the company registry, I would have to say to them, I'm sorry, but the idea is already taken. That's correct. You need to go and create your own idea. No copy. There's no copying. And you ought not to also apply that noble so-called rules that you've been applying, because, well, for starters, you're not a Christian. You're not a Knights Templar. You're not a royal. You're not a noble. And you're not meek enough. And you're not even qualified to apply those rules. So why apply them? Who told you could apply them? So what did you get out? Where did it take you to? That's correct. You cannot use my intellectual property, let alone my treasures, without my authorization and without payment as well. That's correct. And you can't steal my identity. You get your own identity. I'm sorry. It's a problem with the people of Aotearoa is that when they see something that they like, that's correct. They can't help themselves, but they want to steal it. Unfortunately, there's 800,000 of you. It's not unfortunately. There's hell of a lot more of you out there that can create your own intellectual properties. That's correct. And your own ideas. Problem is, you're lazy. You're lazy. They're lazy. They're lazy. Oh, it's too hard. Oh, I can't be bothered. Oh, I'd rather just buy stuff. That's correct. Rather than making it, Well, if that's the case, hey, you get funding from the government. You don't need to enter my kingdom. That's correct. You're not part of my kingdom. If you're part of the treaty partnership and the treaty arrangement, then you're not part of my kingdom. It's a private monarch. That's correct. It's simple as that. It's as simple as that. So for you people to come in, you're only what? You're only going to hurt yourselves, or possibly you're going to end up wanting to harm me. That's correct. Or we're going to have it out, as in, a war, a tug of war. That's correct. Which is now going to happen because of the fact that you were too jealous and too arrogant that you wanted to control my intellectual property and harm the so-called director through the criminals and also dictate to me. That's correct. You got no right to go there. Hey, there's a lot of Pākehās in this country, a lot of other indigenous people that you could easily control and dictate. But you do not need to direct that to me. That's correct. Irrespective of whether I'm on the job seeker or I look indigenous, you got no rights to even go there in the first place, because you're going to look like an idiot when we come to court. And you have to explain yourself. That's correct. Except you won't know what to say, because I don't know what happened. Because you're expecting me to cover your white ass and your black ass and make excuses for you. But it ain't happening. That's correct. Guess why? Because I'm turning 50. And you can't give me the treatment of a 10-year-old, let alone that's right, a juvenile delinquent. Let alone a what? A nobody? Because I'm a somebody, not a nobody. And I'm way above your classes, and I'm not a slave either. And if you're in a criminal organization, then you can only be a slave, and you got no right to dictate to me. It's such an insult for a slave, and the only thing I've got a right to kill you. That's correct. You being a slave, wanting to dictate to me? I'm a free agent. I'm an independent person. I got a mind of my own. You got a president who tells you how high to jump, how low to sit on your ass. Yeah, he tells you what to do. That's correct. And you got the nerve that's right, to come dictating and barging into my private space and even and wreck my stuff. That's correct. You got the nerve to show me that kind of bad attitude. That you wouldn't dare do to your own people. Especially the ones that are qualified, and got lots of money. No, you wouldn't dare do that. Because they would bury your fucking asses. Yeah, if you ever did. And not even to the podcasts that seem to like their so-called pussy and pricks and their buttholes more so than cleaning the inside of their homes, let alone sanitizing their bloody homes. That's great. I can't understand why a Pākehā would want to have sex with this asshole next door. Look at the state. Have you been inside his home? Man, it looks like it needs a pest control or a fire extinguisher. You need the fire engine to come and clean it out. Burn it. That's correct. I don't know how Pākehās can have sex with people like that. That's correct. They're unhygienic. They're unqualified. They're low classes. That's correct. Maybe because of the sex thing. I think the English are really got it badly, the sex addiction. I know. Man, if they had a special pill that can turn their so-called the sex switch off, man, that would be awesome. Why? Because having so much sex with so many people and almost everywhere else, wherever you go, is not a good thing because it affects your children. It affects teenagers. It affects the vulnerable people. That's right. And then all of a sudden, they end up raping somebody, committing sex crimes, molesting their children. Yeah, it affects. That's correct. It has dire consequences. I don't think a lot of you people realize that, the seriousness of having sex outside the marriage arrangement all the time. So this warning is for my rallies. And Mr. Brick. Sara e koe fia pule mai ia privileges. Sara e fia pule fua kau kala fualo nguku. That's great. About anything to do with me, because as far as I'm concerned, the issue that happened to me back in 96, it ended there. The fact that these MMB members or KKK, whatever people that saw us, going about back in that year, nothing really bad. I mean, it wasn't that bad at all. That's great. So if they presume that you were making out with Mr. Brick, like, it wasn't even for them to know either. And nobody needs to be targeted by a bunch of losers like that. That's great scumbags. So I don't know why they targeted you and even applied their harmful protocols. That's correct. I ain't never been a member, let alone an associate. Only one time that I spoke to somebody at the computer course, but even so, how rude for them to take advantage of that so-called, that's correct. Really rude. It's really disgusting. Desperado, but they're criminals anyway. They don't know any better. But now we're reflecting back, and it's just so sad to see the chain of events, harmful events, that led up to this situation. That's correct. So, Mr. Brick, fuck off. Sa ikaw kalalong ko, awang ela kalakalaw pa ako sa Samoa. Sa lapu lawalong ko. That's correct. Do I look like, could I possibly be a kolua to someone like that who's married? I didn't think so either. If he was stalking you all this time from 96 and telling everybody that you were his secret lover, well, I don't think so. It never happened. That's great. If that's what he was telling to everybody, well, you can wonder now no more why you got harmed and targeted by the same stupid organization. That's great. But I'll say this, another thing for the KKK. KKK, you don't own this person, and you got no right to dictate. In fact, tell your associates and tell all your members, don't dictate, stop it. Don't you dare ever dictate to me, that's correct, in my privileges. And don't stalk me either. I'm not interested in having sex with any of you. That's correct. Get off my back, but get out of my life. That's correct. And get out also of my Facebook. You don't have a right to be there. Right. You won't be able to speak to me in person, for real, in life, in reality. Because I will tell you where to go. I will tell you, there's the door. Now fuck off, get out now. Get out of my face. That's correct. And I will do this exactly the same thing with any other criminal organization, any other gang members. And these ones inside this building, I will tell them this, please don't talk to me. Walk away now. Walk away peacefully. Like, turn around, go the other way. I don't want to hear anything you need to say, right? That's right. And that's how it should be. So any gang members outside, when you see me, don't come near me. Don't need to say anything. I'm not interested in anything you need to say, right? Right. Those conditions in the Judge TV is clear. I'm a straight up Christian. I'm a straight up noble. And also I'm a German. And when the German kicks in, I got nothing to do with any of you. Right. I know who I am. And I don't want to hear about any of your nonsense and your excuses and blah, 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 blah. Go and talk to your members, associates, talk to your presidents, talk to people that know you, understand your so-called lifestyle and what you get up to and blah, blah, blah. But I don't want to hear it, right? I don't want to hear anything from you. I certainly don't want to have anything to do with any of you. That's why I've had to call on the 1,000 Nazi soldiers to come to intervene, to teach you people about your boundaries, to remind you again what not to do, the do's and don'ts. That's correct. Because you obviously forgotten, or I think in this case, they obviously didn't care. So for that reason, you be ready when they come. That's correct. And when you're ready to take the bullet, it's time to go. That's correct. You should have learned a long time ago. There are some people that you people have no rights to go near, let alone speak to, let alone dictate to, right? Let alone apply any of your garbages. Nobody told you to apply any of your garbages. Protocols, whatever you call them. You should have applied it to your people. There's 800,000 of them. So many New Zealand borns, nga. Nga ala fia pule fia oso me ai lunga ya oi nga. Maka nga ia. Nga mai pau. Ele kaulia ni la come fight. That's correct. I know that. Ale nga ale fio mai nga fia ngai mai oi le fia ngai. Le kala fia ngai foi. You at least you know that. Well, Mr. Prick now knows. That he's just another Paumuku. Hey, Mr. Paumuku, don't talk to me. Don't talk about me to anybody out there. Don't dictate to my life and my privileges. Bawal kalaka sa konga e pule ai ulo ko olua. But looks like he had so many ko oluas out there. That's correct. And I mean so many ko oluas nga. Me lan fia pule maya oi. Ya ngale oki level me konga maku yai. Just sa ole ya. Ni ma sia sile ma fau. Ale au le anga ya ma kia. That's correct. Nea sisi e fia pa ya oi lo me fefeu nga. Mr. Brick. Ni e kaunga lele e sanga e kaukala lo nguku. That's right. Sanga e dictate mai au. Ele also ko lua. Nga fea lava nga fai se ko lua. Ele fai se ko lua si aula lea. That's right. Nga le malo loa ma sa lapu lava lo nguku. Wa sa o nga e fai se kala about sa fo e fue pule I me fai al mako ai nga wai loa. Sa. Sa lapu lava. All right. Thank you. Right in the name of the Father, the Son, of the Holy Spirit. Amen.